Okay, great. So, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, API Security Testing 101, What It Takes to Ship Secure APIs. My name is Amit, and I'll be your host for this session. Thank you for joining us in this webinar. Before we begin, just a few quick housekeeping rules. This session is being recorded, as you all must have heard, and we'll share the recording and resources with you after the webinar. You can drop your questions anytime in the Q&A box. We will address them in the live Q&A session at the end. Okay. We'll also run a few polls and quizzes, so stay tuned and join in. In today's rapidly evolving digital landscape, APIs have become critical revenue generating products, with 75% of revenue driven by APIs for 20% of companies. However, this accelerated adoption comes with significant risk. This webinar will deep dive into the complexities of API security testing, addressing the often overlooked vulnerabilities that can compromise entire application ecosystems. In this webinar, uh, we will be understanding the critical importance of API security testing, exploring the evolving landscape of API risk and breaches, providing actionable insights of implementing robust API security measures, highlighting the limitations of manual security testing approaches, demonstrating the necessities of automated API security solutions. And if anything is left, our speaker will definitely complete the rest of the things. Okay. So we have got a power pack session lined up. So let's get started. A quick word about our organization before we start the presentation. Meteonic is a leading provider of DevSecOps and software engineering solutions. We work with enterprises across the spectrum to optimize and secure their software delivery pipelines. We are proud to be technical partners of Levo, a pioneering API security testing platform that's built with automation, intelligence, and ease of use at its core. Together, Meteonic and Levo aim to bring cutting-edge API security solutions that align with today's agile development cycles. So let's start by hearing from you. We have a quick poll to understand your current API security posture. Please take a moment to submit your answers. So we have a poll coming up. Okay, till that time, till we have the polls, I have something. I'm working with a transactional service provider from over past 14 years, and it's some business process engineering and implementation. Okay, great. Okay, so we have a poll of, let's see, just allow me. Okay, so here we have the poll. I'll just share my screen again. Okay, I hope this is visible. We have this, we have the questions of poll in the chat box. Please start with, please open the chat box and you can click on the link and you can start with the poll. You can ask, you can answer the questions. I'll be telling you these questions. You can answer as per your convenience. So here's the first question we have is how frequently does your organization update its API? Okay. Next question, if you have answered this question. Next question we'll be having is what is the biggest challenge in managing API security? lack of comprehensive visibility, complex authentication mechanism, frequent API updates, resources constraints, keeping documentation current. And next question will be, how do you currently conduct API security testing? Manual presentations, automated security tools, combination of manual and automated testing, minimal or no formal testing, or rarely or never used. Okay. So I hope everyone has submitted the answers. Can you please uh, open the link in the chat box where you will be having this link from where here you can participate in this quiz. Okay, great. So here we can see the results. We have 20.69% daily for the first answer. Weekly is 20.69% again. Monthly 27.59. So we have most of the people doing this testing on monthly basis, and a few more people every 6 months. Okay, great. Next question that we had is, what is your biggest challenge in managing API security? So there is a tie actually between four options: lack of comprehensive visibility, complex authentication mechanism, frequently API updates, resource constraints, keeping documentations current. Great. Next question was, how do you currently conduct API security testing? So most of the people have answered combination of manual and automated, and rarely or never very people are not using that. Manual will still have good number of manual pen testing going on. Great. So these were the three answers. So it's really nice to hear from you about the things, about your opinion. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Mr. Buchi Reddy. He is the founder and CEO of Levo.ai, a leading company in API security. With over 17 years of experience in engineering and cybersecurity, Buchi has a proven track record of driving innovation and implementing cutting-edge security solutions for large enterprises. Buchi's expertise in agile engineering practices and security architecture has made him a sought-after speaker. His hands-on approach to security focuses on scaling efforts to keep pace and evolving technologies such as AI and continuous developments. At the helm of Levo.ai, Pucci continues to push the boundaries of what's possible in securing APIs, helping organizations of all sizes stay ahead of emerging security threat while fostering a culture of innovation and compliance. Let's welcome Mr. Buchi Reddy to take us through the entire session. Please, sir, it's all yours.
Hey, Ravi. Thank you, everyone. Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to be here, and thanks for taking time to join this webinar. Like Amit is introduced, I come from engineering background. Actually, let me just share my slides. All right. Like, did you see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. So today, we're going to talk about the API security testing 101. How do you ship secure APIs? So, and this is often oversimplified. We will actually get into the details and understand what is all involved. But just to again introduce myself, Amit has given some details. I'm the founder and CEO of Levo.ai. I built my first API almost 17 years ago to build high frequency automated trading systems as part of a company called DESHA. And I have been part of multiple architectural movement as well. At Appdynamics, we converted our monolith into microservices, and I was part of adopting Kubernetes to lead to run these microservices. Was part of that journey, and Appdynamics was acquired by Cisco, and I was there leading our initiatives to align Appdynamics' security posture and all of that, bringing that to the level of Cisco. So in my career, basically, I went through using a lot of APIs. I went through some of the problems. It's actually very good to see the poll results to understand what you are, where you are with respect to, how frequent the APIs are changing and how are you security testing them. And I have faced them myself in my journey, and I've started Levo based on these experiences. So let's dive in, right? Before diving into the security side, like why APIs in the first place? I mean, most of you are already aware, and that's why you are here. But just to look at some basic numbers, at least one out of every five company is getting their revenue, at least majority of the revenue from APIs today. That's what the stats say, and I think this we asked the poll also, like how often the APIs are changing. I think if I remember the stats, at least more than 55% or even 60% of the people reported saying the APIs are changing at least a month, once a month. I think almost 40% reported they are changing in once a week in this poll itself. So that's how often these APIs are changing. So APIs are super important for your revenue, and they are changing very fast. Um, which is good for the revenue and the accelerated innovation. But is that good for security as well? And apparently not, because there has been a lot of increase in the risk with this accelerated pace of API adoption. And the when polled a lot of audience, they reported problems in several areas. But very commonly, again, I think in this we have run that poll, right? There was a tie between different problems. Clearly, there's lack of API documentation, and the APIs are changing so fast that we don't know the exact change. There's no change log. And often documenting that very clearly and sharing with all the parties is not happening enough, or is not happening fast enough at the least. And finally, the API security testing. Again, bunch of you have reported that it is still manual. I'm glad to see not many reported saying never, but still, like good percentage of people have reported that it's happening manually or less frequently. So these are the problems that have been seen in the industry, and some of it was causing the data breaches and all of that. So why bother about security testing? Because there have been data breaches due to APIs that were not secure or that were not well tested and put into production. And of course, we don't need to reiterate the importance of avoiding data breaches, because when they happen, enterprises lose a lot of revenue, you lose reputation, the brand erosion, and you lose customers' trust. I mean, we've been on the other side of the table, right? I'm pretty sure some of you would have received emails from some company saying there was a security breach, and next time when you are signing up or when you are giving some of your data to them, it lurks at the back of your mind. I was like, oh my God, like they had data breach. It happened to me a lot. Like I even got $5 reward for somebody losing my data. I'm like, oh my God, is my personal data only worth $5? I can't even buy a coffee with it. So it's super important to avoid those data breaches, and they have been on the rise, especially the API related data breaches. And A- APIs are so critical that it's not just the API layer that gets impacted, because they're in layer 7, and Oftentimes the vulnerabilities in the APIs get abused to actually attack other layers of your product as well. Whether it is the data layer and or even the cloud completely. Like there were like several occurrences where a simple vulnerability in API that has helped the attacker to completely run some workloads in the cloud or steal the cloud's access key, security key, and credentials like that. So, unfortunately, the weakness or vulnerabilities in APIs, the impact does not stop it only at the API layer. It actually impacts every other layer, and data layer especially very hard. Uh, and the reason for that is this. If I mean for those who are familiar with a lot of cybersecurity attacks, in an enterprise stack, uh, some other attacks previously, the hacker has to figure out a weakness to get in, or like they usually do a lot of recon on the websites. They find some weakness and then they have to enter the network. And then from there, they have to figure out how to move internally from one host to the other. And so it takes bunch of efforts to really get to the crown jewels, as they say, are the very valuable things in your company. Compared to that, APIs are sitting right on data. I mean, like bunch of APIs are just wrappers on top of your database to expose the records, right? And to get the records or to ingest the records into the database. Because of the nature of those APIs, a simple vulnerability, as soon as they exploit that vulnerability, it's already data breach. They don't have to do 10 steps like in some other cases to actually exfiltrate useful information out of your environment, which is why they're very dangerous. Um, and obviously, a lot of regulatories have recognized the importance of it. And I'm personally super happy and glad to see India is way ahead of this curve compared to a few other countries. So if you see the compliances like PCI, DSS, they recognize this and they are now starting to mandate all the companies which are subject to PCI to maintain API inventories, to do much better API security posture, and to do the testing regularly. In India, whether it is Reserve Bank of India or SEBI and even the insurance regulatory like IRDAI, all these are starting to mandate all the companies that are that are under the regulation to do better security postures. The part I personally liked about the India mandates, they were like very, very specific. Some mandates or some governance vaguely say, oh, secure your data or secure your applications. Here, like these mandates got way more specific and they clearly say like APIs. You got to have an inventory of APIs. You have to test them regularly, preferably with automation tools and all that stuff. So it's coming and enterprises are starting to invest more and more in this area, fortunately. And there is some confusion, especially because vulnerability scanning and some of these things are there as a concept for a very long time. APIs are slightly different, and some of the previous web scanners or web crawlers don't actually test APIs for security posture. So, like, if you are thinking, hey, I have a dash scanner or I have some spider or web crawler that's going to test my APIs for security posture. No, they don't fully because APIs have a particular signature and the testing involves exactly feeding in the correct payloads and all that. So we'll get into a lot of details around that, but sorry to break it if anybody is still thinking the web scanners or the dash products are gonna solve API security for you. And the other one is passive monitoring. They are helpful, but they don't completely test actively. Like they don't try to act like a hacker. They don't try to inject things into APIs. So if you are doing just passive monitoring or passive testing, that's necessary but not sufficient. It's not going to find the high impact vulnerabilities in the APIs. So I think we have seen some of the attendees answering manual testing, and pen testing is a very common way to the way that we see in the industry for securing APIs. And I think it is done that's the best that we could do. And manual effort was needed because of the complexity that is involved. But it's not enough. The reason I would say it is bound to fail is, I think, again, the poll goes back to so many people have reported that APIs are changing every week, every month, and even some of them reported daily. 20% reported daily. If they are changing so often, just the scale itself, it's very hard to keep up that kind of scale unless you have an army of people. But in most of the companies, the ratio of actual pen testers or even the security engineers compared to developers is like pretty bad. On an average, we hear 1 to 100. There are even worst 1 to 400 also we heard. Like best case is 1 to 50. So 50 developers in one security engineer or pen testers. So it's definitely not possible to keep up with the pace. And we also discussed about the lack of documentation. So when APIs are changing, let's say there's a new field introduced or new API endpoint introduced, um, is every party, including the security people, the penetration testers, is every party kept up to date about that? What exactly was the change? Why it changed? Because uh, even if not every change has to be retested, but some changes are super important that you got to go and retest everything. Like if there is any changes in the authentication scheme and stuff like that. And um, so this is scale is the center of it, and lack of automation is not going to let you do it. And there is severe shortage of pen testing and security engineers everywhere actually. As India is like has a lot of pen testers. I see that, and more people are learning and getting into cybersecurity, which is a positive sign, but it's still not meeting the demand. So there is still a lot more need for it, and from an enterprise standpoint, it is pretty costly. I even heard complaints like, "Oh, we have been waiting for 3 months to schedule this pen test with our vendor." So they have been standing in line, and we heard from some of the largest payment companies that they're not able to release fast enough because until they do this pen testing, they cannot actually release. Nobody wants to take that risk, and that team has huge backlog. Even if they have internal team, there's a huge backlog for that pen testing team because they are doing it manually. So it's just not scalable to do it just because of the sheer scale. And Okay, we discussed APIs are important, and the security of APIs is not keeping pace with the innovation velocity, and that's bad because that's leading to data breaches. And we said manual security testing is not, it may not be scalable, and it's not necessarily the best idea. So what do you do? Or you have to fully automate it so that it scales at the same pace the innovation is scaling, so that you are not worried about releasing insecure APIs or like suboptimal APIs into production. What does it take to actually release APIs? And we said APIs are a different beast compared to web applications. You cannot crawl them, you cannot spider them. So what does it take? Uh, we believe there's four major pillars that are needed in automating API security testing. So first one is the specifications, because we called out that APIs are not documented, and without documentation, how can you automate the security testing? So you got to have very thorough and detailed specifications, like Swagger specs or OpenAPI specs you would have heard of, like the industry standard to document REST APIs, even other APIs. So you got to have the specs so that we understand what that API is doing, and have them in the machine readable format because the automation is going to need it. And then the second one is the authentication automation. Different companies follow different authentication schemes. Some use username password, the basic one. Some use API keys. Some use advanced JWT tokens. Um, and some of these tokens are very short-lived. So it's not like you get one token and you can use it forever. So you got to refresh the tokens, or you renew the tokens if they expire. So there has to be like complete automation of these authentication schemes. And then you got to understand the functionality or the business logic of these APIs. Like let's say if I'm a HR product, And if there is an API to show salary, it's like I should not show the salary of one person to everybody. There's a lot of logic behind it. Like I should show the salary to only the manager and the person or only higher managers in the chain, not others. So there is logic behind it. There's like permutations of different permissions of an RBAC, access-based, ABAC, access-based, attribute-based access control. So all of the context has to be understood. This is often overlooked by a lot of products, and a lot of vendors don't even talk about this. But without that, the testing is not complete. So you got to have a deep understanding of how these APIs are being used. And then finally, which is what some of the subject matter expertise is missing for developers and QA especially, is how can this API be attacked? So the offensive scenarios. So this is where the pen testers shine, and this is exactly the reason why the pen testers, they need to go through a lot of training and courses and all. But even this list keeps changing. Like, there's OWASP API top 10. The OWASP body publishes like what are the most common ways, but there are like it's changing every day. A hacker finds a new way to abuse, and then suddenly everybody who is on the protective prevention or protection side need to upskill themselves to understand what it is and start testing their APIs for that, because they don't want to be the next one to be exploited. So, just again refreshing, you got to bring all these four pillars together to really automate security test or API security testing, which is why it's hard. Like it's not pretty straightforward. So, and I think I'll just deep dive into some of these things. One more level details. What does the specifications of the inventory mean? You might have a lot of applications. So this has to inventory and the specifications have to cover like all the applications, external, internal, and third party. Oh, there is another myth that my internal APIs, the APIs that we don't expose to the internet, are I don't know to worry about the security of them. Like that's complete myth, because especially in today's cloud world, a simple misconfiguration is what it takes for all of your internal APIs to become external, or even there are like lateral movement kind of issues that I mentioned earlier, where like in today's world we cannot assume that we don't need to test internal APIs. That days are gone. So you got to have a list of internal APIs as well, and you got to understand what all different authentication schemes are used. Just to give you one stat from my experience, we have seen one company having 20 different kind of authentications being used in that one company alone. 20. That's a lot. Like it's very difficult for the internal team members to keep up with those things. So when I say 20, like they were using API key in one place, but in some places they were combining JWT. In other places they were combining cookie with auth token. It's crazy. Actually, in some cases, the names in which they are passing the auth tokens is completely different. So 20 combinations is very difficult to keep up with. So you got to have understanding of that. And then to really prioritize the APIs, you need to understand the risk that comes from these APIs, which are dealing with the sensitive data, which are dealing with the transactions. If you are an e-commerce, which ones are doing the checkout and all of those things, because they take slightly higher priority. So your inventory and documentation should actually help you with all of these things. I will touch on in OWASP. OWASP has come up with a list of top 10 different attacks that are happening, right? And in the top 10, there's like three of them related to authorization. And they go by these acronyms: BOLA, BAFLA. Don't worry too much about the acronyms. BOLA stands for Broken Object Level Authorization. But basically, what these are saying is BOLA is like, there are two different users with similar privileges, but one user is able to see other users' data. So oftentimes, there are these kind of issues where in an API, I'm a valid user. I'm using my own token just by changing the resource ID. Let's say, you have like a lot of people use numbers to see, give IDs. my ID is one. Like sometimes I can just go and try ID two, three, and enumerate the IDs. That's the simplest one. Of course, many people have moved away from it, but there are techniques to even guess the next UUID and identifiers and all that. So that's Gola. And this is the top one, the number one issue that's happening. You won't believe that, right? Like when somebody describes it to you, it's like, what the hell? Like, it can't be the case. But that's the number one that's happening across the board. And then there is Bafla, which is like, the previous case that I said where there's permissions to see certain data. Only my manager should see my salary, but not my peers. Uh, so there is like vertical privilege escalation kind of issues. And there's another kind of issues, like they call it as mass assignment, but like there are certain APIs where they're not even like completely validating the inputs that come. So these are all the very commonly happening attacks, and you got to have coverage to test for all these things. And these are just a few samples, right? And again, because we said we are continuously releasing whatever security testing process we are coming up with, they got to become continuous as well. And that's where, like, whoever is doing once in a year, definitely that's not enough. So we got to figure out a way to do it much more often. Um, and the best way to do that is actually getting this into pipelines. Just like we have innovated with DevOps, we are releasing faster by leveraging technologies like Jenkins and GitLab, all of these, and we converted all of these. Whatever we do manually, we converted them into pipelines. And you got to do the same thing for this, and that's what has been the DevSecOps momentum. So and this is how, like, you can, I mean, this is one way to basically get the API security, complete API security in line in a complete automated fashion. So you have cross-functional alignment, and there is like different persona. If you are a developer, you are already working with your QE people, and they do some functional testing. And similarly, the security teams are talking to development teams. So the cross-functional collaboration has to be figured out, and how do you get that visibility for everybody in that? And you got to address the poor documentation case by, automating the documentation. However, it may be, there are multiple ways to do it. There is no one way. And depending on how often you are deploying, you have to figure out where do you want to put this in the pipeline. Like, some companies do it like a once a week kind of automation, and some companies do it like right after they deploy into the first deployment environment. Um, so you got to figure out that. And you got to figure out the access controls. Like, it's better what access controls are present on your APIs. Oftentimes there is like a matrix. You have different roles and different permissions as columns, and you will actually see like, okay, this role is allowed to have this permission. So you got to have all of this. And it's important to know where your most sensitive data is, especially important for BFSI sector, banking, financial, and insurance, because you are dealing with a lot of PII, personally identifiable information of your end users. So, whether it is Aadhaar number, PAN card number, or email IDs, addresses, phone numbers, you got to know where that is, so that you can actually pay extra attention to those APIs that are carrying Aadhaar number. And then you automate the security testing, and you have some additional monitoring on top of this, so that you know exactly what's going in your environment. So all this, I think the entire gamut of things that we discussed, clearly you need full automation for that. Um, and by the way, another stat, average enterprise has like 5,000 plus API endpoints. Like, this is combining internal and external, because like there's proliferation of applications and all of these things, and especially with the movement to cloud, there's been addition of more and more API endpoints. So everybody thinks, like, at least in our experience when we are working with companies, when we ask them how many APIs you have, and whatever number they say, it's actually at least 3 to 4x. Sometimes there was even 10x than what they actually thought. So just I think we have heard from teams just to get some of the things that we discussed, right? We said like we need to gather which APIs are dealing with sensitive data. Just take that as an example. Teams have reported spending multiple quarters just auditing where all sensitive data is present in their company and their environment. And they still don't have the full accurate information or complete information. And people report saying like, oh, I have my API documentation in Confluence, only to realize the last updated time for that Confluence is like 2 years ago. So these are all the various reasons why the manual has to be completely converted into automation. So that's the strong case that we suggest, and that's the trend that we have been seeing as well, and that's where uh, Levo comes in as well. And what we have built at Levo to, and again, just to go back to this slide, you got to bring all these things together in an automated fashion to completely automate the API security testing. And ultimately, the end goal is for you to have that assurance that all of your APIs are tested thoroughly for security posture and different security vulnerabilities before they go into production so that attackers cannot easily exploit and avoid data breaches for your organization. So if that is the ultimate goal, the way we do it at Levo is we brought in these modules. We have four core pillars. One is the discovery module where we automatically find all the APIs that you have. Like, I said 5,000 plus APIs on an average in an organization. Like our stats actually showed even much more than that. Like we have even seen companies like having 25,000 plus API endpoints. Not even kidding. Like, yeah, I still remember like my favorite quote is one of the CISOs said, APIs grow like mushrooms in my company, and we have seen that live. When we are discovering like within 1 or 2 days, 25,000 plus APIs is huge. And our discovery module makes it super easy without you do anything. As soon as you install, we discover all the APIs at scale. And there's documentation module, which auto-generates open API specs, or Swagger specs for all of your REST APIs, and the other documentation for other kinds of APIs like gRPC, SOAP as well. And we even generate postman collections automatically. So you can actually take out the postman collections. You never have to sit and write postman collection again because it's already getting generated automatically for you for every API. And then we continuously monitor your API ecosystem, every API for various things, for monitor it for sensitive data, monitor it for authentication changes. We look at the API changes and generate change logs. Like we tell you when APIs change. We look for misconfigurations and all. And then finally, the security testing module. By bringing together all the things that we discussed, we fully automated the security testing at scale. So we won't get into too many details, but at a very high level, our product itself works like a 3 tiers. We have a data capture tier. So we are relying on your existing API traffic because that's how we can discover, right? We also look at your code. So we are actually combining both. So we look at your traffic, we look at your code, and based on both of this, we are giving you that 5,000 or 10,000, whatever is the number of APIs that you have in your environment. We are telling all of that, and we are giving open API specs. So the first layer is super, super important. And we process your entire API traffic in your environment. We call this as a privacy preserving architecture. And with this privacy preserving architecture, we make sure your data, your end users' data is not sent outside your environment. This is the number one concern people have. Usually, the moment we say we are capturing your traffic, everybody is like, wait, are you going to take my data to your SaaS? No. This is very unique to us. And uh, we had to innovate a lot in this space, and it iterated in such a way that you don't have to worry about your data leaving your environment. It is important for scale, it is important for cost reasons, and most importantly, it is important for privacy and security purposes. So we process all of your data in your network and only send your API doc and the metadata to our SaaS or to our platform. Um, and the testing, how this testing is happening. So you might have your own CI tools, Jenkins, GitHub. We embed our test runner there, or we can even give you a CLI that you can put on your laptop. But we're talking about automation, so it better gets into Jenkins or those automation tools. And you can decide when that will be triggered. Is it like a daily, nightly, or you want to trigger it right after the first deployment? So this CLI or the test runner sits in your environment, and you can test any environment and even multiple environments. And the way it's working is, so the lot of this smartness of what all needs to be tested, what data need to be fed, and all of that is built into our security testing engine. And this test runner is basically getting all the tests and running it. So it's almost like you can see it like a runner that is sitting there and just running. And by keeping this inside your network, we also don't ask you to open up any of your APIs outside also, and it helps you to test internal APIs or private APIs as well. So again, no changes to your code, config, or environment, no opening of firewalls, firewall rules. It's designed to work the way you already work. And and our goal is to test every API that you have for every attack vector. And it gives very comprehensive coverage like authentication, testing, authorization testing, getting very, very granular, even testing object level permissions and all of this. And the best part is these tests are generated, it's not the same test that's generated for every API, every application. Uh, Going back, we'll look at the observability or the learning has been done already on your APIs, understanding how the authentication is done, what kind of parameters it is taking, is there a request body or not. Based on all these things, the tests are very tailored. So you can almost say it's like somebody sitting there spending time to understand your API and then coming up with the exact tests based on that. So that entire thing has been automated. These tests are very, very effective. Um, and Excuse me. And it gets into your complete automation pipeline. It makes security people's life super easy. It even makes developers' life super easy because you're getting the documentation, you're getting change logs, and most importantly, when vulnerabilities are found, those vulnerabilities don't come like one-liners. Rather, they come with exact set of API calls using which you can reproduce. So every vulnerability that is found and reported by Levo has an exploit in it. And just like, if manual pen testers are also doing, you try to ask them, is there a proof? But if without that, often we see there's a lot of back and forth between dev and security people. There is security jargon sometimes. Like if you go to some devs and say, hey, there is a BOLA issue in this API, I'm like, what is BOLA? Right? You got to go to them with a jargon that they understand and give enough details that does not throw them off, right? So yeah, that at a very high level. And one last thing, like we deploy, we have a SaaS product. You install few components on your side, but the platform itself can be run in SaaS, or you can completely run in your network. So there are different ways to run it as well. Um, so I'll do in the live demo, I'll do a very quick, I'll keep it very quick. I don't want to. I think we dived into a lot of details. Okay. Let me share my screen. All right. Hope you can see my screen. So, uh, I'll repeat. Levo's functionality was we automatically discover all of your APIs, and continuously document them. We continuously monitor and fully automate the security testing. Right. So I'll focus on these functionalities in that order. First, what you see here is the main dashboard where we actually talk about like how many applications are there in your environment, how many API endpoints are there, This is a demo environment, and by the way, this is not mock data. It's a real application that's running with real API traffic. Um, and and as you can see, so many details, especially the ones that are super important for your risk, like how many applications are having sensitive data, how many APIs are not authenticated, and all these details. And you can also, from our continuous monitoring, you can see if you found any well-known CVEs, any potential vulnerabilities, any misconfigurations, all this in findings. And the vulnerability section is where like there are active vulnerabilities that are found from active testing. So this is the dashboard, but let's jump into the applications, right? The first value prop you get is the inventory of all of your applications. And this is like you're not inputting these, just to be clear, like we are automatically discovering them. And there's a lot of flexibility on how these applications are named. You might have that question of how do you name them? How do you know the name? We can name it based on different things. Like we can name it based on the C name or the URL, or you can name it based on um, the actual commands with which they are running, or we can name it, we can give a custom name, or we can name it based on Kubernetes, how you name them in Kubernetes. It's all automated. And as you can see, you know how many API endpoints are there in every application, and how many of them have PII and sensitive data, how many of them are authenticated. You can even see when did they receive the last call, how active they are, and lots of these details. And you see this play button. This is as simple as it gets to actually click that button and run tests when you are ready. But this is where there's a lot more information. Next level, you see all the API endpoints and the exact paths and identifying the path parameters and all of it. And this is the real value. Like imagine, again, this app has 26 API endpoints. We have seen applications with 1,500 API endpoints, like you in one application. And all of that, like automatically getting discovered and showing. Let's dive into one particular API. This is like the real money screen, I would say, because this is where there's a lot of details, especially if you're drilling down into one API endpoint, whether you're a developer, QE, or security person. All the parameters, different parameters that API takes are identified and documented. Different response schemes are identified and documented, and you will see like what is the exact scheme. And the OpenAPI specs I was talking about, this is OpenAPI 3.0 spec. This is completely automatically generated by Levo. And imagine this happening for all the 5,000 or 10,000 APIs that you have in your environment automatically. Like it's close to impossible to imagine humans writing such comprehensive documentation. And you can get the Postman collections as well at an individual endpoint level or overall application level. And again, you see this run test button at a single endpoint level as well. And when APIs change, you can actually see the difference between V1 and V2. You can see the actual API calls. This is the optional feature, but you can see the optional API calls. A lot of QE and security people use it for debugging and to understand what is the authentication like, what are the headers and all this. Like they even debug some production problems by looking at the API calls here. Um, I want to show the sensitive data screen. We were mentioning we gather and show what all sensitive data is present in your environment. This is the full audit of the sensitive data in the entire environment. It's like there's credit card number, Aadhaar, PAN card number, all of it will be coming automatically. And in this demo environment, if you see, credit card number is extensively used across several applications and several API endpoints. And you can even go to the field level. So it says like in the response, there is a field called credit card number. So it will be highlighted, and in the production environments, like you won't see the values directly. This is designed and the setting, you have the settings and flexibility, but in pre-prod environments, this is only if you enable, you will be able to see this data. Just FYI, this is not like we don't collect this data automatically, but you got to enable explicitly. But at the even if you don't enable data collection, what you will see is the field name. Okay, this is the exact API, this is the response, and this is the field name where credit card number is there. For you to see the actual number, you have to enable the setting to say, okay, collect the data because I want to actually see what it is like. So this is super helpful in compliance and all of this. Let me jump to the testing. So if you have, you would have seen Jenkins and all these build jobs, like you have continuous run of the jobs, and this what you're seeing here is actually continuous running of security tests. And this is one sample security test. In this sample security test, there were like 140 different scenarios that were tested, and 109 scenarios, or we call them as test cases, were successful, as in there were no vulnerabilities found. But 23 different scenarios have failed, and we found vulnerabilities in them, all kinds of vulnerabilities. Excuse me. If you deep dive into one API endpoint, you can see different scenarios for which we tested these API endpoints. Like we test for broken authentication, we test for authorization, and like I mentioned, we cover the full OWASP API top 10. You see different injection, and we even first test. And by the way, like these scenarios are customizable. You can enable, disable whatever scenarios make sense for you. You can add more scenarios. You can ask us to add more scenarios for you, because at the end, the back of it, there is complete template-based automation, so that you come to us and say, oh, you know what, like this has to be tested. There's one more scenario that you don't seem to be covering already. We can add it for you very quickly. It rarely happens, but it does happen. And other thing, we are looking at the industry. We're watching for the different data breaches and threat feeds. Based on that, we keep refreshing more test cases. Like within each and every category, also we keep adding more and more assertions. And I want to show the one that I said earlier. When vulnerabilities are found, you have the full exploit proof here with detailed calls. You can even copy paste the exact call command or the API call to reproduce it. So there is no question of false positives or is it real or not, because that's where we heard like a lot of time gets wasted between dev and security people. So instead of reporting false positives and throwing a lot of, causing alert fatigue or throwing a lot of false alerts on you, we report only the ones that are exploited. So that's actually a real issue and you better fix it. And we have integration ticketing systems, Jira, ServiceNow, and all those tools and alerting integrations. Like we can send this to your Slack or email or Teams and stuff like that. Hopefully, you've seen a taste of, how this complete thing, including discovery, documentation, and continuous monitoring and security, is automated. And this is the view where you actually see all the vulnerabilities, and there's a bit of vulnerability management that you can do. But like I said, you can basically create a Jira ticket. Either you can automate that, you can say every time you find vulnerability, create the ticket automatically, or you can do it manually as well. All right, that's all from my side. I think let's open up for questions. Hopefully, I didn't go too fast.
No, that was all right, because I think I see people are also interested in different things and they are asking lots of questions. So we'll definitely shoot lots of questions, and let's open the floor for questions. If you haven't already, feel free to drop your questions in the chat box or question and answer box. Okay, Mr. Buchi will definitely address some of the queries right now. So we have
Yeah.
one question that we got as from Shagun. Its Levo focuses on security testing, right? Or is it going to also help automated functional testing?
Yeah, good question. Right now, we don't focus on the actual functional testing. We are staying on the security side. We do a bit of fuzz testing and schema conformance testing that is helpful to maintain robust APIs, like not just security, but not the full-fledged functional testing.
Okay. I think that answers your question, Shagun. Next question we have from Mr. Atul Daf. What is the criteria or prerequisites for discovering the APIs?
Yeah, that that's a great question and very detailed. Like I mean, it takes a lot of time to get into the details, but that's where our like the core IP that we built comes in. But to keep it short, I think I briefly mentioned, right? We look at your API traffic. and we look at your code, we can also look at your logs. So code, traffic, and logs, we're combining all these three. And when it comes to traffic, how do you capture traffic is the next question that obviously comes, right? We have built, agents, or we call it as sensor that you can install in your environment. We have built integration with a lot of your existing tooling, whether it is API gateways or web application firewalls or even Nginx and all this. So we have different integration points, and common across all of them is we don't ask you to make any code changes, and installation is usually done in like less than 5 minutes. So because we understand that enterprises have like lots of applications and very complex environments, requiring any changes at all is going to be very difficult, or it just takes forever. So it's just drop-in replacement, and it is all real time. That means like the case I was talking about, the 25,000 API endpoints in 2 days. They are using Kubernetes, and Kubernetes especially makes it even more easier to deploy these kind of tools. And they just installed our tool with one Helm install command, and then we were off to the races and finding based on the traffic and code, and so that's how it works. Traffic, code, and logs, different integration points, and we'll talk with you specifically and understand your enterprise stack to propose the exact integration points.
So that is a really difficult and very lengthy question, I think. So we have another two, three questions coming straight ahead. And we have one question like from Raja Nagendra Kumar. How easy is it to add new custom vulnerabilities as new ones are discovered by CVE database?
Yeah, it is it's so the back of this, the tests are Python based, and we made it as easy as it can get. I think now we are exploring AI to actually make it even further as well, so that we can just take some, a natural language prompt and create it as well. But it's super easy, and we are also available to, make it or add it for you very quickly if you don't want to, jump into the Python code or get your hands dirty. Very simple Python code.
Great. Another question from Raja sir itself. What is the overhead of your plugins in high performance SaaS solutions?
Yeah. So again, the discovery area, whenever we talk about our product, the discovery area gets a lot more attention just
Yeah.
because of the nature of it, right? Because it almost sounds magical. Some people would even think like, are you kidding me? Just don't lie. Because the numbers are staggering, or you're talking about 25,000 API endpoints in 2 days, and you're saying no code changes. What is the magic here? That's usually the question. Yes, the overhead, we it's very, very minimal, like often less than 1%. Because there's like lots of details, and that's where again I said I worked at AppDynamics, right? For those of you just if you don't know AppDynamics, it's an application performance monitoring product. AppDynamics has agents that sit inside your application,
Mhm.
not next to it, not outside, inside your application. And those agents were built with like less than 1% of the overhead. So the Levo is even much better and safer in my opinion. Like it's not sitting inside your application, next to it.
Mhm.
And but a lot of best practices we carried from our past experiences as well. Like we sample heavily. We are not looking at every API call. Remember the goal. The goal is to identify your APIs and learn enough about them. So we only take like enough representative traffic. So the IP that we built is smart enough to understand. We sample at the connection level. We sample at the API endpoint level. So there is lots of devil in the details, and we also, by the way, we give visibility into HTTPS APIs also automatically, and we don't ask you to ask you the certificates. Again, I think that brings up another lot of questions. People are like, how is that even possible? How can you break my
Yeah.
encryption? So that's where
we will
the
we will end up in a loop, I think. After that, it's like never ending. Again and again we will be having
yeah.
a continuous set of questions regarding that. Definitely I can understand.
So I'll
So
just leave one thing, right?
yeah.
Go read about eBPF, extended Berkeley packet filtering. So that's a technology that we use to capture traffic at scale without making any code or config changes to your applications. And that gives us that power to even tap into HTTPS traffic.
Right. So I would request everyone to please stay with us because we have a very interactive quiz after this, after a couple of questions that is being asked. So we'll be having this quiz, and we have some exclusive goodies for that for the person who wins the quiz. So quickly we will just jump to the two last questions that we have. That how we are recommending API best practices if found missing during validation.
How we are recommending API-based practices if found missing during validation. So yeah, I see. The if you look at API best practices, it's not one list. So you got to cover the entire gamut, and we look at even let's start with very simpler things like, okay, are you this is again a lot of devs might not care. Sometimes the response headers are returning saying I'm using Nginx X.Y. And devs, QA people might not worry about it. We may not even flag it, but for security people, it's a big risk because you just gave away one more information for the hacker or attacker to come back to you with sophisticated attack. Because now they know you're using Nginx, so and so version, they're gonna just look up the CVE database, find the exact gaps that are present in that same Nginx version, and then come back to the targeted attacks. This is a simpler one, but on the other hand, like are you passing query param auth tokens in query params? Are you using strong authentication? Are there any known CVEs? Like if the CVE database is pretty big, and are there any known CVEs? So the list goes on. And what we did is even there also, we don't want to be the one deciding all the best practices for you or limiting it, I would say. We come up with a big list of best practices, but you can also write yours. And even there, it's customizable. You can write your rules with simple Python, like as, and some of our customers got creative. One customer has put in rules to find which APIs are supposed to be within the VPN, but are being accessed outside VPN. If you think about it, like it's not very easy to get that list, but because of that continuous monitoring and validation of these, and we allow them to write their own rules. So the answer is we cover a big gamut of a big list of validations to cover the industry best practices, but you can also add your own.
Okay, great. So last question before we jump to the quiz section. I have API traffic coming from load balancer and have found around 3K APIs belonging to us. Is there a way that I can use a black box approach to find the vulnerable view of those APIs?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a great question. And what we found when we started working with enterprises is in some of the cases, they don't even have the exact test users or authentication details as well for various reasons, right? Like very large enterprise or other team owns it or all of it. So that's why what we did, we when it comes to testing, you can either feed in the exact test users and credentials, um, and or alternatively, we can just take the data and replay it. So we look at a normal API call, we can take it and just replay it by actually injecting with the same auth token, but by injecting attacks into the API call for all those various scenarios. So that actually is very powerful because in these kind of cases where like, and by the way, we can mirror traffic from load balancers as well. So this is the perfect scenario to completely cover it. Like so, we can just mirror the traffic from load balancer, or like if it is like an layer 7 API gateway, we can just get the traffic from there, and the automation will be done by just by replaying some of those calls. And we have smartness to understand that expiry, how when the tokens expire, and also ways to replay as soon as possible so before the token expires. So that's one way some people are doing where they don't even have to bother about test users and getting extra credentials.
Great, great. So definitely, Atul sir, we will be having a proper use case. We will be having a proper interactive session. We would love to have a session with you regarding that. Please have some interact with me for more details. Yeah, definitely we will do that. We will have a dedicated session with you. And one last question that we have from Rohit is Levo automation required for those organizations which are using only 50 to 100 APIs, or that can be done manually?
So if you have pristine, up-to-date documentation, I think I guess automation, in my opinion, does not fully depend on the API count as long as you have more than a dozen. You see, it starts getting, but you know, if you absolutely cannot buy a tool, like at the least, what I would say is at least automate the, if not testing, automate the discovery and documentation, all the prerequisites part. Don't assume the pen testers are really testing thoroughly because they cannot without the documentation update. So my answer would be obviously you might think I'm biased, but even 100 APIs endpoints is quite a lot to humanly track unless you have like 10 pen testers, which I won't assume you will have that kind of numbers.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, sir, for your answer. And we have some good appreciation for you from the attendees also. Amazing session by Mr. Buchi. Thank you so much. And
Oh,
I would also like to thank you. So that was a really great session. We got to learn a lot of things from you, and we also, I think, had lots of questions. People have learned a lot of things. So now let's have a bit of fun and test your API security knowledge with a short quiz. Okay. And top scorer will win a surprise gift hamper from our side that will be shipped to your address. So we'll be having this quiz on the chat box. We will be having the link in the chat box. So I think, yeah, we have this link in the chat box. Please open this link and please rename yourself with your original name because I see the names are going to be very different. So you can also participate. We can see who can beat your knowledge in this.
Rohit Nigam, Kamal Cactus,
Okay, great.
Wizable,
So here is the case. We can see lots of people joining.
Rupesh J, Krunal Gelani, Atul Dav, JD, Lady
Okay, we
Aimbot,
can see lots of
Anurag
people
Kichka,
join. Please rename yourself as your original name.
Slow Heat, House Cactus, Free Heat, Mrs. Cactus, Ah, Poonam, Rupesh Joshi, Naresh Reddy, Pretty, Quiz.com, Data joined, Play and Create.
What percentage of companies drive 75% of their revenue through APIs? %40. What is the typical number of APIs in an average application? (26 to 50).
Final question. Double points.
Which regulatory pressure is the primary driver of security investments? Regulatory pressures, 52% of enterprises.
Third place, Kamal Mystery. Second place, JD. And the winner is Raja Nagendra Kumar.
That's really great. We have our winner, Mr. Raja Nagendra Kumar, and thank everyone for joining and participating in this quiz, right? And thank you all for joining us today. We hope this session gave you clarity on the importance of API security testing and what it takes to ship secure APIs. And thank you very much, Mr. Buchi sir, for your insightful presentation. We will be sending you recording and key takeaways soon. Until then, you can just we will be having this option in the link in the option, and you can connect to us. You can open that link and you can connect to us for an one-to-one session where you will be having the detailed discussion about this tool, and we will be having this opportunity to get to know this tool a little better and how this will benefit your organization, because each and every organization works in a different way. So how it will benefit your organization and your applications. So thank you very much. Until then, we'll meet soon. Stay connected with Meteonic LinkedIn profile and YouTube page also. Till next time, stay secure, testing smarter, not harder. See you next time.
Thank you all
Thank you very
for
much.
your time today. Thank you.